In this video, we're going to go over the subject matter of communication, tactics, and de-escalation, particularly the incident regarding the officer-involved shooting when Sonya Massey was killed. My guest is Ernie Stevens, retired police officer, worked 28 years in the profession, but also was part of starting the mental health unit at his large agency, and he's the co-author of the book, Mental Health and De-Escalation. Here's my interview with Ernie Stevens. Well, Ernie, before we get to the part where this incident goes completely south very fast, I did want to mention or get your opinion and input on when the officers are on the front porch with Sonya Massey, and they can tell by her dialogue, the officer gets the idea that there's some mental health issues there. So he asks her, how are you mentally? What's your opinion about how he approached that and asking it?
Yeah. So at the 1:16 a.m. mark of the body camera footage, the victim comes out and contacts the officer, but the victim continues to repeat, "Please God, please God."
Please God, please God, please.
Is this your car over here? Oh.
Please God.
That's not your black car in the driveway?
Mm-mm.
Oh, well, we checked your yard. We walked around the whole block. We didn't see anybody.
Right? And she's got her phone in her hand. She continues to scroll. The deputy starts to ask about the vehicle, but then it goes on to what you just mentioned. At the 1:17 mark, he asks, "Are you doing okay mentally?" 1:17 mark. The victim replies, "Yes, I took my medicine."
You doing all right mentally?
Yes.
Sure.
My medicine and stuff.
All right.
And that's a very, very telling statement, especially if the officer has any training in crisis intervention, because these are the key words, phrases you want to listen for in case you have to use the most restrictive measure to do an involuntary commitment on somebody. So you don't want to think that that's always going to be the outcome. You want to think least restrictive. But when you start hearing these statements, the vehicle in the driveway can really wait, and you should start keying on what this victim is saying and how they're saying it and their mannerisms and truly what they're focused on. And for her, it was that phone. She wanted to call somebody to help her, and we can talk about that as well as the timeline works on.
Eventually, they worked their way into her house, to which, me personally, I was never a big fan of going into someone's house. We didn't have to.
Yeah, the 1:18 mark, 1:18 a.m., they enter the home, immediately start looking around at the body camera. You can see that the house is very cluttered, right? It's not very well kept, which is not a crime, but now you're starting to thinking about what you're hearing, what the victim's saying, and now the environment in what she's living in, right? The victim continues talking to someone on the phone saying, "I was just calling to get some help." Again, another statement where earlier the deputy did ask, "Well, what kind of help are you looking for? What do you need?" Right? I think as you watch towards the end of the body cam footage and you listen to it, the officer knew exactly the type of help she needed because he started calling out the number 1096, which I'm assuming is a mental health call.
And then we get to focusing on the vehicle, and they kind of just want to focus on that.
It seemed like the focus was on that for some reason instead of the person that is starting to show to be in crisis.
I just kind of wish they'd have left in the first place.
Well, they had an opportunity to leave, right?
Yeah.
And at some point, the officer felt like he wanted to walk in and look around and see a little bit more information about what was going on. But you're right. At the 1:19 minute, the mark, 1:19 a.m., she's seated on the couch. He's asking for the ID, and she says, "Hand me my Bible."
Grab that Bible, please.
Yeah.
Right? So that is an incongruent response to a request from the officer, right? Had nothing to do with what he asked for. She said, "Hand me my Bible." Already on the porch, she's saying, "Please God, please God, please God," right? So is this somebody that's in a mental health crisis? Is this somebody that's in a spiritual emergency? Like there's so much here early on that can be identified where you need to start thinking, okay, let's reassure this individual that they are safe. Right after that happened, right after she asked for the Bible, the officer involved in the shooting tells his cover officer, kind of makes a motion towards the kitchen.
Know where my ID is.
You see that stack right there, maybe?
Okay. 1 second.
Check on her.
Let me do this.
We don't need a fire while we're here.
Right.
And that's when you see the body camera of the cover officer start going towards the kitchen. At that point, the officer, the primary officer, allows the victim to stand up and walk into the kitchen. Now, I don't know what your training taught you, Scott, but
Kitchens are bad.
kitchens are bad, right? There's not a whole lot of good comes out of the kitchen unless my wife is cooking, because I'm telling you that this is not somewhere where you want an individual to go, whether you're there on a welfare check or a disturbance. It's just a tactical nightmare. Yet the two officers allow her to walk right through them and go into the kitchen. And that's where things really begin to escalate.
Let's go there right now, because
Yeah.
this is just how something that starts out so calm, so collected, not much to it in the beginning, to just the worst case scenario happening, to which we have an unjustified, well, I believe it to be unjustified, officer involved shooting. So when she goes to the kitchen, and you've watched the video, what is your opinion about how they communicated with her at that point, knowing your background and dealing with people in crisis? What's your opinion of how they communicated with her at that point?
Yeah, and I want to get to that, but I also want to back up for just a moment and look at the officer's initial response and mindset, right? Because they're knocking on the door. They don't announce. Then they have the dispatcher call to try to get her to come to the door. They finally announce, and he's making these little comments. Well, I guess she needs to put her drugs up, right? Sarcasm. Are you going to come to the door or not? All right, hurry up. I mean, right. So to me, this officer doesn't even want to be there. Like, it's like, hurry up. So now let's go to the kitchen. She goes in there. The cover officer, there's the boiling pot of water. She starts walking up. The cover officer starts to back away. And she says, "Where are you moving?" He replies, "Away from that hot, steaming water." He recognized, okay, this is a potential danger. I'm going to back up. Good move, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, here's how the conversation went. 0120 mark. I rebuke you in the name of in the name of Jesus, is what the victim says. Again, consistent with hand me my Bible and oh God, oh God, oh God, please God, right? These are consistent statements of somebody that feels like they are not safe in the moment. At that point, you see the officer, the deputy, puts his hand on his gun.
No, that's where I got. I'll shoot you right in your face.
He goes, "You better effing not." Talking about, as she's picking up, talking about the water. "I swear I'll shoot you in the effing face." Pulls his gun. She says, "I'm sorry." And she begins to duck down. Okay. She has taken almost a stance of, okay. But at some point, she reaches up for the water from a crouching position, right? It's not a position of aggression where I'm charging towards you as if I'm really going to throw this on you. It's okay, I'm sorry, and then reaches up for it for whatever reason, right? She's in a crisis. We can't begin to understand why she did that. Okay, to me, still not a deadly situation that the officers were involved in. Okay, my opinion. I've had things thrown at me on calls, and it's like, you're angry at the uniform. Once we talk this out, you'll understand I'm truly here to try to help you.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, pulls his gun. They advance into the kitchen. To me, tactical mistake, right? We teach in crisis intervention training, distance is your friend. The cover officer already realized that and began to back up. The primary officer decided, no, I'm not giving ground. I'm going to advance. At which point he fires his weapon. Now, my question is, as you continue to watch the video, he says, look, the water came right to this point. It didn't look like to me that she threw the water. It looked like to me that after she was shot, the water fell to the ground and then spilled. Now, it was hard to see. Okay, this is totally just from what I can gather from the body language that I saw, the officer's advancement, the shooting that happened extremely fast, and then they wanted to focus on, look how close the water came to us. It's like, I didn't see an upward motion from underneath the counter of a hot liquid, a hot boiling water being thrown towards the officers, but they made it a point to say, look how close it came. And from where she was, had she dropped that pot of water, it makes perfect sense that it would have come towards the direction of the officers on the ground, not in any immediate danger.
It appeared to me that she did in fact throw. However, totality of the circumstances here, still no way, in my opinion, any good reason to use deadly force like they did. Now, once the force was used and she's been shot, I'm appalled, and it rocks me to my core how he was afterwards.
I'm
That's
just as appalled too. The
you know,
cover officer, I'm going to go get my med kit. The officer, she's done, and has a laugh. She's done, like this. Go back and watch it, listen to it. It's that same sarcasm that you noticed at the very early onset of this call of, I don't want to be here. Hope she's not dead in there. She needs to hide her drugs, all this stuff. To now she's been shot, and he tells the cover officer she's done, headshot, and laughs, right? That is concerning. At the 0122 mark, he says, what else could have been done? Which begs me to say, well, what is your training? What could have been done? Could something else have been done? Your cover officer knew to start backing away. I mean, if y'all are trained the same or been in the same type of training, wouldn't you have consistent type of, body communication? Like, I know where my cover officer is, always in my peripheral. If not, they're tugging on my belt or something. I know where they are, and they know where I am. At the 122 mark, she's still breathing, but losing a lot of blood from the head. Let me ask you this. If that would have been the cover officer, would he have delayed in going to get a med kit? Would he have delayed?
Right. No, you're right. Not at all. Yeah.
Would he have told the dispatcher, well, my partner's bleeding from the head a lot, and still don't go get a med kit? And then when you finally do go out to get a med kit, you start making your way back to the door, and then you stop because, now I need gloves. Do you think he would put gloves on had his partner gone down and he needed to apply pressure?
Yeah, I'm with you 100%.
And then it goes on. It continues. The 122 mark, he finally says, I'm going to go get my med kit. Then they finally ask the dispatcher, 123 mark, is there any call history for mental health at this location? Let me ask you this. Where my agency, where I used to work, we had a call history button. It was ingrained in us to hit that call history button. Now, granted, sometimes apartment complexes, you're going to get a logistical nightmare response. But for a home with an address, you're going to get a list of prior calls. You're also going to get information of what was the call for, who was involved in the call, and what was the disposition of the call. You're asking a little bit late if there's any history of mental health at this location. So I'm wondering, did their CAD system allow them the opportunity to actually do some research on this location before they arrived? I think that's very, very telling of going in without having all the information you need or doing the research that you need when you respond to a call. 0123 mark walks back towards the house with a med kit and then turns around and goes back for gloves. No urgency at all. Zero urgency. 0124 tells the other officers that are arriving she's 1096. I'm assuming that means she's a mental health patient based on how he was talking about this call code. But he already thought mental illness because he was asking her earlier about how's your mental health. She said, I took my medicine. So he already knew this. 0124. Is there anything we can do for her? No. Then I'm not going to waste my med kit on her. 0125 mark. This FNB is crazy.
It's horrible.
After he's already shot her in the head, he calls her an FNB. He had more urgency putting up crime scene tape than he had in getting a med kit into a victim who he said was still breathing. He had more urgency putting up crime scene tape. 0127. She set it up on purpose. It is what it is. So in his mind, what took her so long to come to the door was that she construed this plan of I'm going to boil a pot of water and I'm going to dump it on these deputies. And he says she construed this and it is what it is. That is somebody, I got to say this. We talked about the call button earlier. I can look up the call history. I can know how many calls have I responded to at Scott's house. What was the disposition? Who was involved? Can you imagine if the community was able to hit a button to say, who's responding to my house? Wait a minute. This officer coming out here has had 2 prior DWIs and worked for 4 agencies in 6 years. No, I don't want that officer. Can you imagine if they had the ability to know about who's responding to their house as much as we know about who we're responding to? We have got to do a better job across to this. It's a noble profession. And I know this is I would say, I was about to say, Scott, I think this, these isolated incidents, but are they truly isolated? Do these things continue to happen? And why? Why are these things happening? It was disturbing to watch the first time. It was disgusting to watch the second time. And when I built the timeline on it the third time, I was utterly sick to my stomach watching this film.
It has been very hard to watch that video over and over again, to make videos about it and content about it in an effort to help prevent something like this from happening again and shed light on different aspects regarding legal, which I interviewed Daniel of Police Law News.
Yeah.
I'm interviewing you now to mention the de-escalation and the communication part of it and the crisis response. It's been very hard because this was horrible. I did get my numbers confused. I thought he worked for like 6 agencies in 4 years. It doesn't matter. There were just so many. 2 prior DWIs in less than 10 years, and this amount of agencies in that few amount of years, that's a huge red flag. And this is my concern. So now we're going to get we'll go there. We don't work for an agency anymore, so we can go there. In my opinion, this has nothing to do with the Sonya Massey incident. Agencies are going to get so desperate to hire people because they're so short-staffed. People that don't need to be wearing the uniform are going to still be wearing the uniform.
I totally agree. When you look at somebody that's worked for, let's say, 3 agencies, here's how it should work. If you've got 3 agencies on your resume, you start out at a small agency like I did, a town of 12,000 people. Okay. After a couple of years, you're like, okay, I think I've about done all I can do here. I've been to every stop sign 30,000 times. So you apply to a larger agency. Okay. Like I did. I worked 28 years at a very large agency. Then I retired. Well, I'm still kind of young, but I'm getting a retirement. How about I work one more place? All I know is law enforcement. So I'll get a job at another agency and I'll collect a pension and I'll collect a paycheck because I'm still young and want to do this job. So you look at that, and that's how probably 3 agencies end up on your resume. That we're talking 30 years. These are flags. So what do departments do? How are they screening? Who are they recruiting? Look at this guy. He was huge. He was a big guy. Sonya Massey's a very small, frail looking woman, right? That they're letting just get up and walk around. They obviously weren't concerned that she was a threat if they're letting her walk into the kitchen. And 2 big, strong officers. Come on. Like this was avoidable. This was completely avoidable.
Yep, 100%. It rocked the law enforcement profession and the American public, as it should. So going forward, see, we've dissected it. Going forward, we need to focus on solutions, to which we've talked about some just by going over this incident. But the cover of the book behind you there on the wall, everyone needs to read that book that you and Nick Ruggiero wrote. Please go into that, and then how if anyone wants to get in touch with you or follow you, how can they do that?
Yeah, the book is called Mental Health and De-Escalation. You can get it at erneststevens.com. Stevens is spelled with a V. I wish I could give everybody a copy of it. I still got to pray for printing and shipping because it's that important. I wrote this book for especially smaller agencies that can't attend, a 40-hour crisis intervention training, or they're just doing a kind of a watered down mental health first aid course that doesn't give them the opportunity. And I don't mean to say watered down, it's still good information, but you don't get the hands-on role-playing experience that you get in a full 40-hour course. So this book truly is a foundational instruction to law enforcement professionals of what does good crisis response look like. And I talk about that call history button. I talk about gathering information. What are signs of mental health crises? What are they versus a drug-induced psychosis? What is it versus, right? There's so many things that go into when you're dealing with somebody's mannerisms and personalities and what they're saying and what they're doing. So this book really does break it down. Active listening, de-escalation, some federal law in there about the rights of a patient when you have to take them somewhere. Full of information. I think moving forward and what you're asking, what should officers be learning? It all comes back to me, and I'm going to give a shout out to Chief Andy Harvey on his book about procedural justice. Do we truly understand what a procedural justice response to somebody that needs the police or that encountered the police looks like. Are we using and do we have legitimate authority to enforce constitutional rights to make sure that we are protecting you and not violating those rights? And then number two, or have we lost so much confidence that the community's lost so much confidence that we have to rely on statutory authority and now just flex our muscle every time we show up on something? If it comes to that, we're in trouble. We're in trouble as a nation and we're in trouble as a profession. And I hope we don't ever go down that road.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate you saying that. Thank you for coming on the channel, Ernie.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.